Two Chinese nationals are dead after their boat capsized near one of Taiwan's outlying islands. Taiwan's stocks surge in their first day of trading in the Year of the Dragon. Taiwan's population is getting older, but so are its animals. We find out how animal shelters are coping with the country's aging pets. Plus, get ready for cicadas, a lot of them, as billions are set to swarm North America this spring. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Philip Brossard. Taiwan's Coast Guard is defending its actions after two Chinese nationals were killed near the Kinmen Islands. The boat they were in capsized after being chased by the Coast Guard. The incident has triggered an angry response from China. Rick Glowert is following developments for us in Taipei. Rick, what more do you know?
So 2 people were killed in this incident, but there were 4 Chinese nationals on board the speedboat when it capsized. I've just been speaking with the Taiwan Coast Guard. The spokesperson told me that the 2 Chinese nationals that survived were sent to the hospital. They were since released from the hospital and are now in custody. They face fines of up to $300,000 and 5 years in prison. This all began when Taiwan found a Chinese ship had illegally entered Taiwan's waters and chased it. Now, China has condemned Taiwan Coast Guard's action. They've called the Taiwan Coast Guard malignant and demanded an investigation. Now, Chinese vessels entering the waters around Taiwan's Kinmen Islands is quite common. Over the last few years, Taiwan has expelled 15,000 boats from that area, but deaths like this are rare.
And just how dangerous are incidents like this? Could this escalate?
So there are signs that things are tense over on Kinmen. Local officials there have been telling local Taiwan fishing boats to make sure they stay in Taiwan waters to avoid further escalating this situation. And of course, this comes at a time of rising tensions across the strait. We know that China is not happy with recent presidential election results here. That's when the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, won an election victory and secured a historic third term in power. That ruling Democratic Progressive Party, of course, strongly rejects China's claims of sovereignty over Taiwan. We also know that China has been increasing its use of grey zone warfare tactics on Taiwan. That includes sending military boats and planes towards Taiwan, but it also includes sending fishing vessels and sand dredgers into Taiwan's territorial waters around outlying islands like Kinmen. There are, of course, concerns that Beijing could use this sort of incident, that is Chinese nationals dying in Taiwan waters, as a pretext for military escalation. But the analysts I've spoken to predict a more subtle approach from Beijing. That is that Beijing could start sending bigger or more Coast Guard vessels into the area, claiming that it needs to protect its fishing fleet.
That was Rick Glowert in Taipei reporting on an incident with Taiwan's Coast Guard that left 2 Chinese citizens dead. Taiwan's stock exchange took a break over the Lunar New Year, but has now come back strong. Leslie Liao has more.
In the first day of trading in the Year of the Dragon, Taiwan's stock exchange has come out swinging. The TAIEX, the index which tracks the performance of Taiwan Stock Exchange, hit a record 18,725 points just 1 minute into trading. But that benchmark was short-lived as trading continued. But the TAIEX still closed at 18,644 points, which is a gain of 3% and a record close. Now, earlier we spoke with economist Gary Ng, who says that Taiwan's stock exchange is playing catch-up with global tech trends after it suspended trading over the Lunar New Year holiday.
I do think that this boom may not be so related to the holiday itself. It's really about when Taiwan has the Lunar New Year holiday. It happened that the US has seen a very strong boom in terms of the tech sector, which affect Taiwan.
One of the biggest performing stocks today is that of Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing companies. That stock opened up nearly 10%, briefly bringing the company's market cap to a record high of $572 billion. Now, TSMC is one of Taiwan's most closely monitored companies because of the pivotal role it plays in the global economy. Gary says that typically when TSMC does well, Taiwan does well.
If TSMC does well, then you're talking about the whole supply chain, and all these players that supply goods to the TSMC will also perform well as well. So we can pretty much say that it's pretty much a TSMC-driven market in Taiwan.
And Gary added that with Taiwan's market so closely tied to global tech trends, recent developments in areas like AI spells gains for Taiwan stock trade as a whole. Kama Shi and Leslie Liao in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Japan's economy has slipped into recession after shrinking in the last quarter of 2023. The annualized 0.4% drop in Japan's GDP growth means the country is now the world's fourth largest economy, behind the US, China, and Germany. The drop has taken Japanese economists by surprise. Many expected GDP to grow at a modest rate in the fourth quarter. The new data could create a challenge for the country's central bank, which hopes to raise interest rates for the first time in nearly 20 years. A Taiwanese internet personality has been arrested in Cambodia for allegedly faking an assault during a live stream. Chen Neng-Chuan, known online as Good Night Chicks, claimed he was beaten and robbed at a casino in Cambodia. In a live stream, Chen appeared in a disheveled state, claiming to be fleeing security. He then went offline, sparking claims he went missing. Cambodian authorities have denied the incident happened and are expected to release more information. Indonesia has wrapped up its presidential election, and the country's defense minister is the likely winner. That's raising concerns about the country's democratic values. Louise Watt reports.
Claiming victory in Indonesia's presidential election, Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto. He's a former army general linked to past human rights abuses. But during the campaign, he shed that image for one that resonated with young voters, attracting a huge following on social media with videos of him dancing. Nearly half of Indonesian voters are under 40.
Kemenangan ini harus menjadi kemenangan untuk seluruh rakyat Indonesia.
Despite his victory speech, election officials have still not declared a winner. And Prabowo's two opponents, Anies Baswedan and Ganjar Pranowo, have not conceded defeat, with official results set to be announced by March the 20th.
Proses penghitungan belum selesai. Saat ini penghitungan partai dan lain-lain terus dijalankan. Teruskan fungsi ini.
But according to unofficial counts, Prabowo has 57 to 59% of votes. He needs 50% to win outright, or else the top two candidates go to a second round. It's Prabowo's third attempt at the presidency. Many of his supporters are too young to remember him as a feared army general in the 1990s at a time of dictatorship, and only see the image he now projects as a grandfatherly figure.
That is actually the most concerning issue at the moment for the Indonesian elections, about whether Indonesia, how will Indonesia maintain its democratic value if Prabowo win the elections. Of course, his past human rights abuse records would influence this view.
Prabowo has had the tacit support of the popular outgoing president, Joko Widodo, and has said he would follow Widodo's foreign policy agenda. The outgoing president has maintained good relations with both the United States and China. He has yet to be officially declared the winner, but Prabowo's supporters are already celebrating, despite wider concerns that a victory by a man once banned from entering the United States for 2 decades because of his human rights record could put at risk Indonesia's hard-fought-for democracy. Klein Wong and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un supervised the test of a new surface-to-air missile and vowed to take a more aggressive stance in disputed waters, the country's state TV reported on Thursday. It comes a day after South Korea's military detected the North firing multiple cruise missiles off its eastern port of Wonsan. Kim has overseen a flurry of weapons tests since 2022 and has recently upped his rhetoric against the South, declaring it Pyongyang's #1 enemy. Kim also accused South Korea of violating its territorial waters. For more on the security situation on the Korean peninsula, our reporter Jaime Ocon spoke to Matthew Sussex, a security analyst from the Griffith Asia Institute in Sydney, Australia.
What do you make of the increased frequency in weapons testing? Is this more for show, or is there a logic to this?
Oh, look, I think it's probably a bit of both, in that now seems to be a very opportune time to create havoc in the international system. And, North Korea has been no stranger to that for many, many years. But I do think that it senses that, there is potential to, be able to rattle its sabers and show off its capabilities, just to give the United States and South Korea and Taiwan and Japan something else to worry about. And I think to an extent that this is also informed a bit by, the closer relationship between Russia and North Korea, which, probably sees as being able to act with a bit more impunity than previously.
We've seen rhetoric heat up. Recently, we saw North Korea label South Korea as its biggest enemy. How significant is that in the sense of how partners are going to need to adapt to manage these threats?
Yeah, look, that's a fantastic question. And to be honest, the answer could be either. In the past, we've seen the DPRK ramp up the rhetoric as a prelude to, in fact, signaling something that it wants from the West, and is potentially, prepared to make concessions. On the other hand, of course, it could be that there is a sense that if you harden your rhetoric towards the United States, towards South Korea, and its friends and partners, then you are, maximizing your visibility within the area, within the region, as a country that can do harm.
Recently, we've seen not just traditional military threats like missiles, but also new threats like cyber attacks, satellites, even drones being tested from North Korea. Would you say that this is making it more difficult for the United States and its allies and its partners to counter these threats?
North Korea is becoming a much more sophisticated multi-domain threat, whether that's, evolving past ransomware to actually being, quite capable of, extracting sensitive information. On the pointier end of it, I think it's a real worry that the DPRK is modernizing its military quite significantly, and also its ability to strike at range. And I think perhaps the concern is going to be not just that the DPRK evolves a new suite of longer-range nuclear-capable missiles, but that it starts moving towards some kind of triad, survivable triad through submarines, which we know it's, interested in putting nuclear weapons on, land-based warheads and potentially aerial ones as well. And I think that would be a really, really dangerous thing for the region and extremely hard for the United States to deter.
That was our reporter Jaime Ocon speaking to Matthew Sussex, a security analyst with the Griffith Asia Institute in Sydney, Australia. Taiwan's aging population issue doesn't only apply to humans, it's also hitting the country's pets. And animal shelters are struggling to cope with the long-term care of their elderly residents, as Reese Ayers now reports.
With limited mobility and suffering from dementia, 16-year-old Lilu eats mush through a syringe, just one of dozens of animals in need of constant care, living at this government-run shelter in New Taipei. Just like their human counterparts, Taiwan's pets are facing a crisis of age, as fewer caregivers try to cater to a growing number of animals requiring long-term care.
一般的动物跟需要长照的动物其实很大的区别就是它的活动力其实会下降。我觉得比较难照顾的大部分就是后躯瘫痪或者是卧床的动物，需要帮它翻身啊，或者是让它起来，至少坐轮椅稍微活动一下。
Staff at this shelter, one of just 8 such government-run shelters in a city that's home to over 300,000 pets, craft their own solutions to their residents' needs, such as homemade wheelchairs for animals with mobility issues and collision guards for pets with visual impairments. But scarce resources limit how much help staff can give on site.
人力有办法做到的部分，其实我们会尽力去做。需要进一步做到医疗打点滴或者是插鼻胃管那些，我们会后送到动保处去做进一步的医疗。
To help cope with an ageing pet population, the new Taipei Animal Protection Office is planning to build a municipal long-term pet care hospital, though some veterinarians recommend pet owners and shelters consider more humane options for ailing animals.
We have met the owner that want to postpone as long as the animals can live. We actually have a scale that of the quality of life scale that we will perform, which is the 5H to M scale. The 5H is the hydration, hurt, hunger, hygiene, and happiness. 2M means mobility, and does the animal have more good days than the bad days? And if the point is under 35, then I will suggest to do the euthanasia.
As Taiwan's four-legged residents age alongside their owners and shelters begin reaching capacity, animal lovers will be forced to consider when's the right time to say goodbye. Andy Scher and Rhys Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, how a wildlife organization is teaching people with disabilities a new skill set. Stay tuned.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
人生的话，你发现说，我们大部分都是爱美的。
我自己少遇见一朵花，我可能就不是这个样子。
开始思考什么叫做一个本土性。
大声的唱出来说我是台湾人。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Farmers have clashed with police for a third day in India while protesting for fair crop pricing, debt relief, and policy reforms. Rosie Greninger reports.
Thousands of farmers in northern India block highways with their trucks and tractors as they march towards the capital, Delhi. They're demanding assured prices on their crops, their debts waived, policy reforms, and doubled wages, just weeks before the country heads to the polls.
दिक्कत आ रही जी, बच्चे पढ़ाने हैं जी, उनका खर्चा नहीं पूरा हो रहा है, महंगाई है जी, ये फसलों के रेट नहीं है जी, क्या करेगा जी किसान अपनी फसल जमीन बेचेगा जी, और क्या इस पर क्या करेगा जी, तंगी बहुत ज़्यादा आ रही है, कर्जई हो गया जी किसान.
Farmers feel the Modi government has let them down after breaking a 2021 promise to set up a panel for state-set assurances for crop prices to protect them from market uncertainties.
अब समय मतलब देना उचित नहीं लग रहा है. अगर कुछ ठोस प्रस्ताव हो तो हम समय भी दे सकते हैं, लेकिन उधर से कोई ठोस प्रस्ताव नहीं था.
4 years ago, more than 700 people were killed when farmers spent a year protesting controversial agriculture reforms proposed by the government. And there are fears similar violence will break out again. With protesters heading towards the capital, police have turned the city into a fortress. Delhi barricaded with concrete blocks, razor wire and spikes. Authorities have clashed with protesters over the past 3 days, firing water cannons and deploying drones carrying tear gas. The farmers responding by releasing kites into the air to tangle the machines. India's government has held 2 fresh rounds of talks with farm leaders to resolve the conflict, but farmers called them delay tactics and are vowing to push forward.
जब तक मांगे नहीं मानी जाएगी तो हम वहीं जाएंगे नहीं, क्योंकि भरोसा एक बार होता है। पहले भी भरोसा हमारा टूटा है। आ देखना आगे आगे पहले वाले आंदोलन से बहुत बड़ा आंदोलन ये होगा।
But farm policy experts argue buying all farm products at state-set minimum support prices is economically unviable. Farmers comprise 2/3 of India's 1.4 billion population. And although they don't always vote unanimously, Modi will need to tread carefully and promptly win the support of the country's most influential voting bloc. James Lin and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Hazardous smog is blanketing Thailand's capital, Bangkok, with levels of harmful fine particles far above global guidelines. Air quality tracking website IQ Air says the level of PM2.5 particles is 15 times higher than World Health Organization recommendations. The site ranks Bangkok in the world's top 10 most polluted cities. The city government is urging people to work from home. Residents have complained of difficulty breathing and itchy eyes from the smog. The bad air is expected to last through Friday. Cyclists in Taiwan have taken to the streets in support of Tibetan resistance against China. The event comes ahead of Tibetan Uprising Day. This year is the 65th anniversary of mass protests in Tibet that resulted in a violent crackdown by the Chinese army and forced the exile of the Dalai Lama, Tibet's spiritual leader. Protesters here in Taiwan say supporting freedom and democracy in the face of tyranny is necessary, especially as Taiwan faces its own threat of invasion from Beijing.
自由并非理所当然，更是需要我们去守护的。在中国集权之下，其实不只是战人、赶人，中国的野心勃勃，他们并不会因此而放弃。他们下一个目标就是台湾。
A wildlife organization in Taiwan is teaching people with disabilities to care for injured animals. The goal is to give them a new skill set and the chance to make animal friends. John Van Trieste has this story.
This injured owl is among several animals returning to the wild. They're the Taichung Wild Animal Protection Association's latest success stories. The association has invited a group of people with developmental disabilities from neighboring Nantou County in central Taiwan to help with its release program. But some of the animals, like this eagle, need lifelong care. And the visitors from the care center are here to help give these animals the love and support they need too.
老鹰其实危险的不是它的嘴巴，是它的脚。对，所以我们会戴手套嘛。那等一下再抓它的时候，我会直接把它放在你的手套上面。举高。对。好。好，可以，可以。
It doesn't take long for the volunteers and the animals to get acquainted.
可以增加他们生活体验，可以改变他们的心境，这个是帮助他们的。他们来照顾动物，我相信对动物照顾也是好的。这样两边互相帮助之下，我觉得对整个野生动物保育是有正向的提升。
After learning the basics of caregiving, they'll volunteer once a month to help feed and clean up after their new animal friends, giving them an important role in the protection of Taiwan's wildlife. Chris Ma and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Billions of cicadas are set to swarm across much of North America this spring in a once every 2 centuries event. And it could get smelly. Sally Jensen has more.
You may know them for their mating calls that together can be as loud as a motorcycle, the cicada. The insect has a long lifespan. There's one type that lives for 13 years and another that lives for 17, and they spend almost all of that time underground. But if you live in North America, you may see something special this year. Starting at the end of April, 16 Midwest and Southeast US states are set for a simultaneous explosion of these green bugs in a rare event known as a dual emergence.
And being able to see something that no living person has ever been able to see,
and somebody only about 6 or 7 generations from now will be able to see again. I think it's just really, really, really exciting.
Cicadas are completely synchronized with one another. So every single 13-year-old cicada will simultaneously tunnel through the ground to the surface at the same time. They'll fly around to find a mate, shed their exoskeletons, and then die. They do this to evade predators. Forming swarms gives them strength in numbers, and most of them survive to the next generation. It's hard for predators to have cycles that sync with the cicadas. After all, being underground for 13 and 17 years, they almost never synchronize with each other, apart from every 221 years. The last time that this happened was in 1803, and entomologists say this year there could be billions of them.
So those really rare events are the opportunities for those cicadas to be all out, and maybe for the species to meet each other, for crossings between species to occur, for co-evolution to happen.
When they decay, their bodies produce an unforgettable smell like that of rotting nuts. So the sheer numbers expected in urban areas mean cicada removal measures might be needed. This year's double whammy will likely end in early July. Scientists recommend leaving the cicadas alone if possible, since they're good for the ecosystem, don't bite or sting, and don't carry diseases. Ethan Pan and Sally Ensign for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Before we go, check out these highlights from the Rio Carnival in Brazil running until Saturday. I'm Philip Brossard, take care, and we'll see you next time.